The alarm shrieked through the command deck as Queen Lyra watched the view screen in horror. A human shuttle, her brother Marcus's shuttle, had just docked with the wrong ship. Not the diplomatic transport waiting in Bay 7, but the Kytherian research vessel Nethys in Bay 5. The same ship that had been flagged for immediate quarantine after their expedition to the Void Sectors. "Your Majesty," Captain Torres stepped forward, his voice tight. "We're receiving transmissions from the Nethys. They're refusing to release Commander Marcus." Lyra's fingers gripped the armrest of her command chair. She had watched her younger brother pilot that shuttle himself, insisting he didn't need an escort for what should have been a routine transfer. His stubborn independence had always worried her, but never like this. "What do you mean, refusing?" she asked, her voice carrying the authority that had brought 3 solar systems under human rule. "The Kytherian captain claims he's already aboard and integrated into their crew manifest. They say releasing him would violate their research protocols." Torres paused, checking his datapad. "Ma'am, we don't know what those protocols involve." The Nethys hung in space like a silver needle, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with alien patterns. Kytherians were known for their obsessive research methods and their peculiar relationship with other species. They collected specimens, studied behavior patterns, and rarely returned subjects until their research concluded. The problem was their research could take decades. "Transmission incoming from the Nethys," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." The screen flickered, revealing a Kytherian captain with translucent skin and 4 arms that moved in hypnotic patterns. When it spoke, its voice carried multiple harmonics that made human ears ache. "Greetings, human queen. Your brother unit has provided fascinating behavioral data. We require extended observation to complete our study of human royal genetics and decision-making patterns. Request denied for removal." Lyra stood slowly. "That human is Marcus Wilhelm, Prince of the Terran Federation, and my brother." "You will release him immediately." "Huh. Negative. Subject demonstrates unique neural patterns associated with leadership caste. Research value. Maximum priority. Subject will experience no permanent harm during observation period. Estimated duration, 7 to 12 rotations. 7 to 12 years. Lyra felt ice form in her veins. "You're holding a member of the royal family against his will. This is an act of war. Subject entered our vessel voluntarily. According to galactic law, he is now part of our research cohort. Query: will Human Queen demonstrate protective behavior towards sibling unit? This data would prove valuable for our social dynamics research." The transmission cut. Lyra stared at the blank screen, her mind racing through options. The human fleet could destroy the Nethys, but Marcus would die with it. Kytherian ships were notorious for their self-destruct mechanisms when threatened. Diplomatic channels would take weeks, and by then the ship could disappear into deep space. "Ma'am," Torres said quietly, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. They're ordering us to stand down and pursue diplomatic resolution. How long before the Nethys can jump to hyperspace? 15 minutes? Maybe less." Lyra closed her eyes, thinking of Marcus. He had been her constant companion during the dark years after their parents' assassination. While she learned statecraft and warfare, he had studied alien cultures and languages. His curiosity had made him an invaluable diplomat, but it had also made him reckless. "Your Majesty," her science officer called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups on the Nethys. They're powering their research chambers." "What kind of research chambers?" "Unknown, ma'am. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Lyra walked to the viewport, staring at the alien ship. Somewhere inside that vessel, Marcus was trapped, with beings who saw him as nothing more than a specimen. The Kytherians weren't evil, but they were utterly alien in their thinking. To them, the suffering of individual subjects was irrelevant compared to the knowledge gained. "Captain Torres, prepare the Valiant for close approach." "Ma'am, with respect, Earth Command's orders. Earth Command isn't watching their brother disappear into a floating laboratory. I need options that don't involve starting an interstellar war but get Marcus back safely." Her tactical officer, Commander Shaw, spoke up. "Ma'am, there might be a way." "Kytherian research protocols require voluntary compliance from subjects. If the subject becomes non-compliant or shows signs of psychological breakdown, they're required to conclude the study. You're suggesting we make Marcus non-compliant? How? The Kytherians don't understand human family bonds the way we do. They see his entrance onto their ship as scientific curiosity, but if they realized he was there by accident, Shaw pulled up a technical readout. Their docking base sensors recorded everything. We could prove he intended to dock with Bay 7, not Bay 5. That might not be enough, Torres interjected. They could claim the accident was part of the research parameters. Lyra studied the tactical display showing both ships. The Nethys was positioned perfectly for a surprise maneuver, but any aggressive action would trigger their defenses. She needed something subtle, something that would force the Kytherians to release Marcus while maintaining plausible deniability. What if he wasn't alone? She said suddenly. The crew turned to look at her. The Kytherians think they captured a human prince for study, but what if they captured a human queen instead? Captain Torres's eyes widened as he understood. You're going to switch places with him. Not switch. Join him. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of engines. Lyra could feel the weight of their stares, the unspoken protests. A queen boarding an alien research vessel was beyond protocol. It was insane. But Marcus was running out of time, and sometimes insane was the only option that made sense. She activated her personal communicator. Prepare my shuttle. Marcus Wilhelm pressed his face against the transparent barrier of his cell, watching the Kytherian researchers prepare their instruments. The chamber around him hummed with alien technology, surfaces that shifted and flowed like living tissue. 3 Kytherians studied him through multifaceted eyes, their forearms moving in precise patterns as they calibrated scanning devices. He had realized his mistake the moment he stepped aboard the Nethys. The corridor layout was wrong, the air mixture different from standard diplomatic vessels. But by then, the Kytherians had already sealed the docking bay and declared him part of their research collective. Subject demonstrates elevated stress responses, one of the aliens observed, its harmonic voice carrying through the cell's speakers. Neural activity indicates recognition of captive status. This confirms human awareness supersedes instinctual curiosity when threatened. Marcus forced himself to remain calm. Panic would only give them more data, and he was determined to be the most boring research subject in galactic history. He sat cross-legged on the cell's floor and began reciting mathematical theorems, keeping his expression blank. The lead researcher, whose bioluminescent patterns indicated senior rank, approached the barrier. Prince subject exhibits controlled behavioral responses. Individual possesses advanced emotional regulation. Query: is this trait common among human leadership caste? I wouldn't know, Marcus replied evenly. I'm not really a prince, I just fly shuttles. Genetic analysis confirms royal bloodline. Deception will not affect research parameters. Marcus had studied Kytherian psychology during his diplomatic training. They were brilliant scientists but lacked understanding of individual versus collective identity. To them, he wasn't Marcus Wilhelm with his own thoughts and fears. He was a representative sample of human royalty. The ship suddenly shuddered. Marcus felt the vibration through the floor, the subtle shift that indicated another vessel approaching. He kept his expression neutral, while his heart raced with hope. Proximity alert, announced one of the researchers. Human queen vessel requesting permission to board. The lead researcher's patterns flickered with what Marcus recognized as excitement. Queen subject wishes to retrieve prince subject? This behavior suggests protective instincts outweigh tactical reasoning. Approved. Capture protocols will apply to both subjects. Marcus's heart sank. Lyra was walking into a trap, and there was nothing he could do to warn her. The Nethys docking bay opened to receive another shuttle. Through the chamber's viewing panel, Marcus watched his sister's craft settle onto the alien deck. The bay sealed itself immediately, trapping the vessel inside. Lyra emerged wearing simple flight gear, no crown or royal insignia. She walked calmly toward the Kytherian reception committee as if boarding alien research vessels was part of her daily routine. Greetings, Queen Subject. The ship's captain addressed her through the communication system. You have volunteered for research participation. This indicates strong familial bonding in human royal genetics. I've come to retrieve my brother, Lyra replied. Your research will be more valuable if conducted on willing subjects. Willingness is irrelevant to behavioral analysis. Both subjects will provide optimal data regarding human leadership dynamics under stress. Marcus watched his sister study the alien technology surrounding her. Her expression remained calm, but he recognized the subtle tension in her posture. She was analyzing, planning, looking for advantages. I request to speak with my brother before beginning your research, she said. Observation of our interaction will provide valuable data on royal communication patterns. The Cytherians exchanged harmonic discussions before agreeing. Minutes later, Lyra entered Marcus's cell area, separated by the same transparent barrier. Are you injured? She asked in Standard. No, he replied. Then switched to Old Terran, the ancient language only royal family members learned. They think we're research specimens. Been trying to bore them with basic responses. Good strategy. She remained in Standard for the aliens' benefit. I've informed Earth Command of the situation. Diplomatic pressure is mounting. Diplomatic channels will require excessive time, the lead researcher interjected. Research will commence regardless of external political pressure. Lyra turned to address the alien directly. Your research parameters are flawed. You captured my brother by accident, not through successful hunting or trapping behavior. This invalidates your data on human decision-making. The Cytherians' patterns shifted to confused flickering. Clarification required. He intended to dock with Bay 7, not Bay 5. Your sensors will confirm this. The research subject made a navigation error, not a choice to board your vessel. Marcus watched the aliens debate among themselves in rapid harmonic exchanges. The concept of accidental capture seemed to disturb their scientific methodology. Additional complication, another researcher reported. Queen subject boarding suggests coordinated rescue behavior, not individual decision-making. Research parameters now include pack dynamics analysis, which requires a minimum group of 5 subjects, the lead researcher noted, with what sounded like disappointment. Current subjects, insufficient for meaningful data. Lyra stepped closer to the barrier. You could release us both and capture a proper research group later. Quality over quantity principle. Negative. Subjects rare. Human royalty specimens unlikely to present opportunity again. The ship vibrated again, more strongly this time. Marcus felt the change in engine harmonics that indicated preparation for hyperspace jump. Once the Nethes entered deep space, rescue would become nearly impossible. Sister, Marcus said in Old Terran. Remember the Cygnus incident? Lyra's eyes sharpened. The Cygnus incident had involved fighting their way out of a crashed transport while protecting each other's blind spots. It had been their first real combat experience together, and they had survived by working as a perfect team. I remember, she replied, then raised her voice to address the Cytherians. If you're studying human royal behavior under stress, you should observe us in actual danger, not comfortable cells. Clarification required. Release us into your ship's maintenance areas. We'll attempt to escape, you'll attempt to recapture us. Much more valuable data on human survival instincts and sibling cooperation patterns. Marcus held his breath. The suggestion was insane, but it was also exactly the kind of scientific opportunity Cytherians couldn't resist. The lead researcher's patterns blazed with excitement. Proposal has merit. Free roam behavioral study would provide dynamic data versus static observation. However, another researcher cautioned, subjects might damage ship systems during escape attempts. Risk acceptable. Ship's internal defenses can contain human subjects while allowing observation of natural behavior patterns. Lyra nodded gravely. We'll even provide commentary on our decision-making processes for your research. Acceptable. Study begins in 30 time units. The barriers deactivated. Marcus stepped out of his cell, immediately moving to his sister's side. They embraced briefly, a gesture that sent the Cytherian researchers into harmonic excitement. Familial bonding behavior confirmed. Protective positioning evident. Research value exceeding expectations, Marcus whispered in Old Terran. What's the actual plan? Create enough chaos to delay their jump, Lyra replied. Captain Torres is tracking us with stealth drones. When they can't enter hyperspace on schedule, they'll assume system malfunction and dock for repairs. And then Then we become their maintenance problem instead of their research subjects. Marcus grinned despite their situation. His sister had always been better at turning disadvantages into opportunities. The Nethies shuddered again as the hyperspace engines charged. They had maybe 10 minutes before the ship could jump, taking them far from any hope of rescue. Research subjects will now demonstrate escape behavior, announced the lead researcher. Ship's internal systems will provide measured resistance to create optimal stress conditions. The cell area doors opened, revealing the strange corridors of the Cytherian vessel. Bioluminescent walls pulsed with alien script, and the air carried scents of unknown chemicals. Marcus and Lyra stepped into the corridor, immediately moving with the unconscious coordination that came from years of shared training and trust. "Remember," Lyra said loud enough for their observers to hear, "stick together and find the engineering sections. That's standard human escape protocol." Actually, it was their signal to split up and cause maximum disruption. The Cytherians, monitoring them through ship sensors, dutifully recorded this human behavior pattern, while completely missing the real plan. They moved deeper into the ship, about to turn a desperate situation into something approaching fighting chance. The corridor branched in 3 directions, each lined with pulsing bioluminescent strips that provided the Nethies ambient lighting. Marcus and Lyra paused at the intersection, both scanning for tactical advantages while maintaining their performance for their observers. "Subjects exhibit caution at decision points." The lead researcher's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "This confirms human risk assessment behaviors override immediate escape impulses." Lyra touched Marcus's shoulder, pointing down the left corridor, while mouthing engineering loudly enough for the ship's sensors to detect. Then, in Old Terran so quiet it was barely a breath, she whispered, "Right corridor, life support." Marcus nodded and pointed to the right corridor, announcing, "This way looks less defended," while actually indicating their real target. Years of shared code language made their deception seamless. They moved down the right corridor at a deliberate pace, fast enough to seem urgent but slow enough to avoid triggering ship security protocols. The Nethies apparently wanted to observe their escape attempt without terminating it immediately. "Wall configurations suggest maintenance access points ahead," Marcus observed, noting actual maintenance panels disguised as decorative elements in the bioluminescent surface. "Perfect. Standard human behavior is to seek ship vulnerabilities during escape attempts," Lyra replied, again playing to their audience while communicating their real intentions. The corridor opened into a larger chamber filled with strange machinery. Crystalline structures hummed with energy, and translation matrices flickered with alien script. At the chamber's center, a massive column pulsed with the ship's primary life support rhythms. "Jackpot," Marcus muttered in standard, then louder. "This appears to be a critical ship system. We should avoid damaging it during our escape." The reverse psychology was crude, but Cytherians interpreted human behavior through their own logical frameworks. To them, avoiding damage to ship systems was the rational choice for escaped prisoners who wanted to survive. What they didn't understand was that humans sometimes made irrational choices for strategic reasons. "Multiple access panels visible," Lyra announced, approaching one of the maintenance stations. "We should examine them for possible escape routes through service tunnels." She began working on the panel interface, her diplomatic training in xenotechnology proving valuable. Her fingers moved across alien controls with growing confidence. "Sister, I'm detecting atmospheric processing controls," she said, switching momentarily to Old Terran to relay accurate information. "Oxygen mixture, pressure regulation, temperature control." "Excellent discovery," Marcus replied in standard. "We should definitely not adjust any of these settings, as that could compromise life support for the research staff." "Agreed. Damaging life support would be remarkably foolish behavior for escaped human subjects." The Cytherian observers seemed satisfied with this reasoning. Through the chamber's communication system, they could hear the research team discussing the humans' rational self-preservation responses and species-typical risk avoidance. Lyra's hands moved quickly over the atmospheric controls. The Nethies used a complex gas mixture optimized for Cytherian physiology, with atmospheric pressure significantly higher than Earth standard. She began making subtle adjustments, not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but sufficient to create gradual discomfort for the crew. Marcus moved to another control station, finding what appeared to be environmental temperature regulation. Kytherians were cold-blooded and required precisely controlled thermal environments. He began increasing temperature in specific ship sections while decreasing it in others, creating climate chaos that would force the crew to focus on system maintenance rather than research. Subjects demonstrate technical aptitude, the lead researcher observed with growing excitement. Human royal genetics include mechanical comprehension. This data suggests leadership caste possesses practical survival skills. They're still treating us like fascinating specimens, Marcus said in Old Terran. Good. Keep them focused on data collection while we work. The ship's hyperspace engines began cycling through their final preparation sequence. Deep vibrations thrummed through the deck plates as exotic matter containment fields stabilized. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the Nethes could jump to safety. Lyra found the ship's internal communication network interface. Kytherian technology relied heavily on bioneural connections, but there were manual overrides for emergency situations. She began systematically accessing different ship departments, flooding their communication channels with random diagnostic requests and maintenance alerts. The Nethes began experiencing what appeared to be multiple minor system failures across all departments. Nothing critical enough to trigger emergency protocols, but sufficient to overwhelm the automated repair systems. Environmental controls showing anomalous readings in 17 sections. Came announcements in the Kytherian harmonic language, translated through the ship's systems. Engineering teams report temperature fluctuations affect equipment calibration. Atmospheric mixture requires manual adjustment in research levels. Life support automation experiencing calculation errors. Marcus grinned as he watched indicators on the environmental panel shift to orange warning status. They're getting too busy to monitor us properly. And too busy to jump to hyperspace safely, Lyra added. Hyperdrive requires perfect environmental stability. They can't risk a jump with system alerts active across the ship. The communication system suddenly shifted to the lead researcher's voice. Subjects have exceeded research parameters. Environmental manipulation demonstrates advanced technical knowledge inconsistent with specimen behavioral predictions. Oh, they're catching on, Marcus muttered. Research protocol modification. Subjects will be returned to containment until systems achieve stability. The chamber's exits sealed with organic-looking barriers that flowed across the doorways like living tissue. The Nethes had decided to end their escape attempt and return them to cells. This presents a problem, Lyra observed, studying the sealed exits. Only if we actually want to escape, Marcus replied. He gestured toward the environmental controls. We've done what we needed to do. They can't jump to hyperspace with all these system alerts active, which means they'll have to dock somewhere for repairs, and Captain Torres will be tracking them the whole time. The ship's artificial gravity suddenly fluctuated, causing both humans to grab support railings. Emergency lighting activated as the Nethes fought to maintain stable flight with compromised environmental systems. All research staff report to emergency stations, announced the ship's automated systems. Environmental control specialists required for immediate system restoration. Looks like their research project just became secondary to keeping their ship functional, Marcus observed with satisfaction. Through the chamber's sealed barriers, they could hear the sounds of Kytherian crew members rushing through corridors, their harmonic voices rising with stress as they dealt with cascading system failures. Subjects will remain in secured location until ship achieves environmental stability, the lead researcher announced, though his voice carried less confidence than before. Research will resume after technical difficulties are resolved. Of course, Lyra replied diplomatically. We'll wait here quietly and definitely not continue adjusting any ship systems. She was still working at the environmental control panel as she spoke, making additional subtle modifications that would ensure the Nethes remained too unstable for hyperspace travel. Marcus joined her at the controls, and together they systematically created the most specifically targeted technical disaster the ship had ever experienced. Nothing dangerous enough to threaten lives, but comprehensive enough to require hours of careful repair work. You realize, he said in Old Terran, when they finally figure out what we've done, they're going to be furious. True, but they'll also be stranded in normal space, within range of a human rescue fleet, dealing with ship problems instead of research projects. Lyra made one final adjustment to the atmospheric processors. Sometimes being a destructive specimen is exactly the right strategy. The hyperspace engines powered down with a defeated whine as the Nethys abandoned any hope of jumping to safety. They were committed to remaining in this system until repairs could be completed, which gave Captain Torres and the human fleet exactly the opportunity they needed. Marcus and Lyra settled down to wait, surrounded by the evidence of their sabotage, listening to the sounds of frustrated aliens trying to repair their ship. It had been an unconventional rescue plan, but it was working. Now they just had to hope their sister's fleet could reach them before the Catherians figured out how to override all the chaos they had created. The Valiant dropped out of hyperspace with precisely calculated timing, emerging from the quantum foam just as the Nethys began emergency docking procedures with Arcturus Station. Captain Torres had positioned his fleet perfectly, close enough to monitor the situation, far enough to avoid provoking the Catherians into desperate measures. Status report. Queen Lyra's voice crackled through the communication system from inside the alien research vessel. "We have you on sensors, Your Majesty," Torres replied. "The Nethys is requesting emergency repair services from station personnel. They appear to be experiencing comprehensive environmental system failures." "Purely coincidental, I'm sure," came Marcus's voice, barely containing amusement. Through the Valiant's main viewer, Torres could see the Catherian ship limping toward the station's repair bays. Bioluminescent patterns along its hull flickered erratically, and several sections vented atmospheric gases in controlled releases. Clear signs of life support crisis. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "Arcturus Station is sending emergency response teams to assist the Nethys. Station Commander Walsh is requesting instructions regarding the royal family members aboard." Torres activated the direct channel to the station. "Commander Walsh, this is Captain Torres of the Valiant. The individuals aboard that vessel are there against their will. Any assistance you provide should include provisions for their immediate release." "Understood, Captain. However, the Kytherian captain is claiming they're voluntary research participants. Station protocol requires proof of coercion before we can intervene." "Research participants don't sabotage ship systems," Torres muttered, then spoke into the communicator. "Stand by for diplomatic authorization." The situation balanced on a knife's edge. Arcturus Station remained politically neutral, serving as a repair stop for all species. Forcing the issue could create a diplomatic crisis that would affect trade relationships across 3 sectors. Aboard the Nethys, Marcus and Lyra listened to the negotiations through the ship's internal communication system. The organic barriers sealing their chamber had remained in place, but the environmental controls were still accessible. Every few minutes, Lyra made additional subtle adjustments to ensure the ship's systems remained unstable. "Subjects continue system manipulation despite containment," the lead researcher announced, his harmonic voice carrying frustration. "Human behavior exceeds all research parameters. This species demonstrates technological adaptability beyond previous observations." "Perhaps," Lyra suggested, "you should consider that we're not specimens at all, but actual people with our own agenda." "Individual consciousness variant acknowledged. However, research value remains significant. Subjects demonstrate superior problem-solving capabilities under stress. Data suggests human leadership caste possesses enhanced survival traits." Marcus approached the chamber's sealed barrier, noting stress fractures in the organic material. The environmental chaos they had created was affecting even the ship's structural systems. "Your research is compromised. We're not behaving naturally because we know we're being observed. Observer effect accounted for in research methodology. Data remains valid for analysis of human royal behavioral patterns under duress." "What if we told you this entire situation was planned?" Lyra asked innocently. "That we deliberately triggered system failures to prevent hyperspace escape?" The communication link fell silent. Through the chamber's walls, they could hear rapid harmonic exchanges as the research team debated this possibility. Meanwhile, Arcturus Station's engineering teams had begun boarding the Nethys to assess system damage. The Catherian ship struggled to maintain life support while alien technicians worked to diagnose the environmental control crisis. "Captain Torres," came Commander Walsh's voice, "our engineers are reporting that the Nethys has suffered what appears to be deliberate sabotage to multiple critical systems. The damage patterns are too precise to be accidental. Can you confirm the sabotage originated from inside the ship?" Yes, sir. The modifications were made through internal maintenance panels, using techniques that suggest advanced knowledge of Kytherian environmental systems. Torres smiled grimly. The royal siblings had created exactly the evidence needed to prove coercion. No voluntary research participants would systematically damage the ship holding them. Commander Walsh, I'm transmitting formal diplomatic credentials. Under interstellar law, the sabotage evidence constitutes proof that Queen Lyra and Prince Marcus are being held against their will. Station authority supersedes research vessel autonomy in cases of confirmed kidnapping. Acknowledged, Captain. We're moving to secure the individuals in question. The Nethys suddenly came alive with activity. Emergency lighting activated throughout the ship as Arcturus station security teams prepared to board. The lead researcher's voice echoed through the corridors with harmonic urgency. External intervention threatens research integrity. Subjects will be relocated to secure laboratory sections until station personnel withdraw. But the organic barriers sealing Marcus and Lyra's chamber had finally succumbed to environmental stress. The material cracked and peeled away from the doorframe, leaving gaps large enough to squeeze through. Time to go, Marcus said, immediately moving toward the largest gap. Research subjects must not leave designated area, the ship's automated systems announced. Security protocols activated. The corridor beyond their chamber began shifting as the ship's bioneural networks attempted to contain them. Walls flowed like liquid, forming new barriers and dead ends. The Nethys was literally reshaping itself to prevent their escape. This way, Lyra called out, remembering the ship's layout from their earlier sabotage mission. She led Marcus toward what had been the maintenance shaft they had noted before. Behind them, the ship's internal systems struggled against the environmental chaos they had created. Doors sealed and unsealed randomly. Corridor lighting flickered through spectrum ranges optimized for different alien species, and atmospheric pressure fluctuated wildly. Station security teams, this is Queen Lyra, she called into her communicator as they moved. We're attempting to reach Docking Bay 7. Ship systems are actively impeding our movement. Copy that, Your Majesty. We're cutting through the docking bay doors now. The Nethys shuddered violently as heavy cutting tools penetrated its hull. Alarms wailed in harmonic discord as the ship's automated systems registered hull breaches in multiple locations. Emergency evacuation protocols activated, announced the ship's computer. All personnel report to escape pods. The research team was abandoning ship rather than risk their lives for data collection. Through the shifting corridors, Marcus and Lyra could hear the sound of Kytherian crew members fleeing toward emergency stations. Subject's behavioral manipulation has exceeded acceptable risk parameters, came the lead researcher's final transmission. Research terminated. Data preservation takes priority over continued observation. They reached the main docking bay area just as Arcturus station security teams finished cutting through the final hull barriers. Human and station personnel flooded through the breach, immediately surrounding the royal siblings with protective formations. Your Majesty, Your Highness, the security team leader saluted. Area secure. We're extracting you immediately. As they moved toward the breach, Marcus looked back at the Nethys. The ship's bioluminescent hull patterns had shifted to deep red, indicating distress or retreat postures. Emergency pods were launching from various hull sections as the Kytherian crew abandoned their damaged vessel. Do you think they learned anything valuable from their research? He asked his sister. Lyra considered this as they stepped through the hull breach onto the safety of Arcturus Station. They learned that humans don't make good specimens because we refuse to behave like specimens, and that human royal genetics include a pronounced tendency toward creative problem-solving under pressure, Marcus added. Most importantly, Lyra concluded as they walked toward the station's secure areas, they learned that sometimes the subjects of research have their own agenda, and that agenda might not align with being studied. Captain Torres was waiting for them in the station's command center, his expression mixing relief with professional concern. Your Majesty, Your Highness, are you injured? No injuries, Lyra replied, though I suspect we've provided the Kytherians with enough research data to keep them busy for decades. Will there be diplomatic consequences for the Nethys incident? That depends, Marcus said, settling into one of the station's chairs, on whether they're planning to publish their research findings. The data on human royal behavior under kidnapping conditions should make for fascinating academic reading. Through the command center's viewing port, they watched the damaged Nethies limping away from the station, leaking atmosphere and flickering with unstable hull patterns. The Kytherians had learned that some specimens were too dangerous to study, and that human curiosity, when cornered, became something far more destructive than mere escape attempts. "Next time," Lyra said quietly, "we're taking a full escort and double-checking the docking bay numbers." Marcus laughed, the sound carrying relief and exhaustion. "Next time, I'm flying with you. There's no way I'm trusting alien navigation protocols again." The crisis had ended, but not in any way the researchers had anticipated. The Kytherians had captured 2 humans for study and instead learned that humans, when threatened, become forces of creative chaos that no laboratory could contain. The Queen had watched her brother board the wrong ship, but in the end they had boarded it together and turned captivity into the aliens' worst technical disaster in decades. Sometimes the most effective rescue was simply refusing to be rescued until the rescuing was done properly. As the Valiant prepared for departure, both siblings settled back into chairs and tried to process what they had just experienced. They had been specimens, prisoners, saboteurs, and finally themselves again. But the experience had proven something important about human nature that no research study could quantify. When cornered, humans didn't just fight back, they redefined the entire situation to their advantage. The Kytherians might publish their research someday, but the conclusion would be clear. Humans made terrible laboratory subjects because they refused to acknowledge that they were in a laboratory at all.